Home Movie was the first Road to Avonlea episode where I decided to make quite a dramatic change in the direction of the series. Season 4 of Road to Avonlea took the series from being over-the-top family drama with a lot of comedy in it to a kind of a more serious pace. We did things like Incident at Vernon River, Evelyn, Felix and Blackie, all very dramatic stories that had light elements to them, but they were taking the series in a direction that was much more like cinema.
Road to Avonlea Season 4 definitely became a more dramatic and, I don't know if realistic is the right word to put it, because I think Avonlea always had a sense of realism to it, maybe a little bit less idyllic. I think that as the kids got older and they were dealing with more adult issues or complicated issues that come with growing up, I think that sort of introduced more serious storylines.
For me, the chance discovery of that time period in 1993 was that I had a great uncle who had passed away and left me a treasure trove of films. A lot of it caught on Crotacombs from the 1930s where the color was virtually undiminished. And so we had all these wonderful, wonderful images of my mother and her family growing up as children. And it struck me that there was a huge, not only nostalgic kind of sentimental appeal in looking at these images, but that they were suddenly an historical document that I was faced with dealing with. That treasure trove of films gave rise to the concept of home movie, because I wanted to kind of look outside the series and try to understand why audiences were so caught up in this affection with Avonlea in this particular time period.
So I think that whole concept of being able to remember back to simpler times or to happier times, I think really played into the home movie episode, because Hetty was trying to find some way to convince the townspeople of Avonlea not to sell out, and by sort of taking a bird's eye view and showing people living their everyday lives really had an impact on convincing them to stay.
So the concept for home movie was one in which Jasper was going to invent a new form of motion picture camera and was going to try and capture a movie of his making. But in the process, he captures all the people in the community, their tragedy, their comedy, their sense of humanness as well. There's one particular scene that we wrote for Sarah Polley where she really implores Jasper to do this, because she says she has no memory of her mother. Her mother died when she was so young. And that was also reflected in real life, because Sarah Polley's own mother had just passed away a year and a half prior to that. So Sarah gave a very, very emotional performance in that scene.
Yeah, I know Home Movie was one of Kevin's favorite episodes. I think because Kevin's own personal experience with his father, I think his father was considerably older than his mother, if I recall. And so I think that kind of looking into the past and seeing how people lived in those times and being reflective about those things, I think is very important to Kevin.
It was the catalyst to create a scenario for the episode whereby Avonlea would discover itself. They would discover that they were creating an historical document, and at the same time they would create a piece of entertainment that none of them had ever seen before. And so you've got an audience looking at an audience discovering what it is about itself that's very special. Once we did that, it changed the whole dynamic of how the series could evolve, because it allowed us to look at the series objectively sometimes, to take ourselves very seriously and to take ourselves very lightly, and to discover a lot of new things about the characters.
When the show was originally produced, to create the black and white footage, what they did was they actually shot the footage as they normally would. They didn't shoot it black and white, and I actually discovered this as we were restoring the episode, because we found all of the original footage that was shot for that episode. Then it looks like what they did is they actually took that footage, they had a print made of it, they projected it, and then they recorded it in black and white, and then they